Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, we are joined by someone very interesting. Michael Martin Humel joins us today. Now, Michael, as I understood it after speaking to you a few days back, you're not blind, but you certainly do have other abilities or a disability, however you look at it. You run your own podcast, and you run a lot of different speaking engagements, and you do a lot of different interviews with people with disabilities all over the place, really. So why don't you walk through the whole fascinating life story, because you're doing a tremendous amount of great stuff for advocacy for people with disabilities. So how about I say this? Who's Michael Hummel? I'll mute my microphone and listen to you. Go right ahead.
My name is Michael Humel. I'm from New York, but I've been in Las Vegas for 20 years, something like that, close to it. And my mission in life is to end the judgment and assumptions surrounding disability. I run a business called Wheels and Warriors Communications. Its focus is to help people with disabilities, their family members, and people within the disabled community be seen, heard, felt, and understood. And the way I do that mostly is by writing my speaking engagements, and I host once a month a speaking engagement called Stories of Diversity that I have anywhere from 5 to 10 speakers talk on a certain theme that I give them, and it's 20 to 25 minutes each time. And I've been writing since I'm 16. I've played wheelchair basketball. I played wheelchair tennis. I played wheelchair rugby and lacrosse. So I'm an athlete, and I have spina bifida, which is a birth defect where when I was born, my back wasn't fully formed. The spine was exposed. Damage was done to the nerves, and then they had to close me up. And from that moment on, I was paralyzed from the waist down.
Excellent. All wonderful information, and I really liked that answer. That was great. So, a little bit more about me, as I said, or maybe I'm repeating myself. I don't know. The name's Aaron. I have glaucoma and a congenital heart defect. I've had many eye surgeries to restore my vision or some of my vision, but I am certainly still blind, and I cannot have a driver's license or drive a car. So I use voiceover and things like that. So I really appreciate and acknowledge what you said about you want to make sure that people who have disabilities, I guess you want people to feel that they should never feel judged. And I really support that statement. I really support that, because I think that a lot of times, at least in my own life as a blind guy growing up, I felt judged a lot, and I would always brush it off and ignore it. And now that I'm in my 30s, I'm discovering how much that affects me. And so what I'm saying is, being judged when you have a disability really does affect people. So, which leads me to an important question. So at what point in your life, because I can tell, obviously, if you have this whole idea about judgment, obviously you were judged. In other words, obviously somebody made you feel judged. So
Yeah.
when was the first time you felt judged? And when did you notice, how did you notice that? And really walk through that whole philosophy of how you came to this whole, of how you came to your whole philosophy, I guess, is what I'm saying. How did you develop your philosophy? Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was probably in my late 30s when I started thinking about judgment and how people looked at me and people perceived me. It's basically the main thing is how able-bodied people perceive me and think of me. They, for the most part, they want to help, but they don't realize, like, touching me before they get the okay is not okay, and it's condescending. Sometimes the language they use, and so basically, I just took happens to me or what I perceive happens to me, and just turn that around on how I want to help. Like my main thing is start a conversation to end the stigma or end the judgment. And what I mean by that is when you start a conversation, when you ask people and answer people and you're transparent and you're okay with the conversation, that's going to lead to like people being open, people having a conversation and knowing each other and knowing what each other's needs are. And my favorite saying is vulnerability is the best place to grow. And what I mean by that is just vulnerability to me, many people look at it as a weakness, but to me it's a strength. It's just, are you willing to be that so that you can grow and get better emotionally and mentally?
I really cannot agree with you more. And I think for me, as somebody who is both blind and I consider myself to be on the Asperger's spectrum. I consider myself to be very, very mildly autistic, but definitely autistic. I totally relate to what you're saying in that oftentimes conversations about disability can be very scary and can be some of the most intimidating things to navigate. And for me, it's always hard because, there are times where I really do think about this a lot. I really do. There's times where I want to speak up to people who are less knowledgeable than me, people who are ignorant. And then there's other times where I know that I shouldn't speak up because I can't cure ignorance 100% of the time. And I'm sure you know what I mean. So I guess one question that just popped up in my brain here is, how do you tell the difference in your own life of moments where you say to yourself, I definitely need to speak up and educate that person? Or how do you tell when the moment comes up where you say, no, you know what? That person is just too ignorant. I really should just ignore their ignorance and go about my business. How do you really tell the difference between those two things as it relates to advocacy?
Well, I think I always, before I started this, which was like in 2017, it was the main that I was always like pissed off and angry. Now I just lead with education. And the difference is if you try once to educate somebody and it doesn't compute or doesn't, it's blocked, just let it alone. Just let it be. So I think at least try once, and then if it doesn't like want to be if the person doesn't want to learn or they don't want to change, you can't make them. And I like what you said as far as you can't change like how ignorant somebody is. Like I know I'm not. My mission in life is to end the judgment and assumptions surrounding disability, but I know for a fact that's not going to happen because there's always going to be someone who's ignorant and doesn't want to learn, doesn't want to change. But I think I personally truly believe that the more conversations you have, the more transparent you are, the more open you are, it's going to lessen. It's going to dissipate. It's not going to completely go away, and I don't want that. I love that, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm one who believes that, there are moments where there's conversations. I mean, I'm in agreement with, I agree with your philosophy, 99% I agree. I just, as a blind person, my personal opinion has been that there are moments from time to time where somebody is just belligerently too ignorant and will simply not receive the knowledge. But you're very right. If you try once to educate them, if you try to have a conversation, if you try to get off on the right foot, that's a lot of the right direction. So your philosophy is a strong one. That's a very, very good attitude about living for sure, for sure. What has been your experience, education wise? What did you study in university, things like that?
My education? I graduated with college from with a degree in journalism. I've been writing since I'm 16, and I'm 47, so it's been a bit. And then my experience as far as advocacy is people have been, for the most part, have been very thankful and welcoming and receiving on the information how I want to be treated, how able-bodied people want to be treated, what they want to be thought of, because one of the main things is people think that and oftentimes that we can't do anything, that we can't take care of ourselves, and that we are. I'll give you a good example. A couple of years ago, I was at a doctor's office, and he saw my wheelchair, and he said, "How'd you get here?" I said, "My car." Oh, you can drive like normal people. That was his answer. And
Wow.
that's one of the things I'm trying to change, because if
Oof.
you're I don't care if you are a doctor and you don't know everything about disability. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you a professional, and do you know how to treat people who are different from yourself? That's the main thing.
Yeah, the main thing for me is I would be very that really concerns me that a the closest thing I can say to what I want to say is that really concerns me that a medical doctor would make a comment like that. That's
Is it? Me too. I mean,
that's I'm trying not to be too direct,
I
but I'm not sure let me put it this way. I'm not sure I would go back to a doctor like that.
wouldn't have.
Um, fortunately and unfortunately, I can tell you that I have consistently noticed in the medical profession, and this comes from me, and I have some amazing doctors with amazing staff.
Hmm.
I have I have had doctors in my life who've saved my life, saved my
Yeah.
vision, helped me enormously. I have also heard and noticed that many people who work in the medical field have very ableist and limiting beliefs about
Yeah.
people with disabilities because it's an interesting psychosis, because they see people who always have a sickness or who always have something that's different.
Yeah.
So over time, they begin to think that all people are disabled. It's a very strange and ironic truth. But none of that actually surprises me. I am pretty scared that a doctor would make that comment. And the scariest part, the most bothersome part of that is that a comment like that is not a comment of ignorance. That's a comment of ableism. And that's truly terrifying that a doctor would say that. Yet I'm not surprised. Not what I also find with these doctors is many of them, all of them are very knowledgeable about the part of the body that they like and that they specialize in, but their business skills don't line up with their knowledge of medicine all the time. So
No.
they
Yeah.
do. I'm not saying that all of them, I'm not making the comment that all of them are like that, but I will say that a lot of times engineers and doctors really don't always have the best business sense. And I've seen it, and um, but the fact that a doctor would make a statement like that, um, is, yeah, that's disturbing.
Yeah. Doctors, in multiple cases, doctors'
Really.
personal, interpersonal skills, in my experience, aren't the greatest, which is sad.
It's very common.
Yeah.
It's very common. Hmm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I would not ask someone in a wheelchair how they drive a car because I know that people in wheelchairs drive cars. I don't know what the technology is called, but I know you do. So it doesn't bother me. So I wouldn't think to ask how you drove the car. I would just wonder, okay, well, he's here for his appointment. I wouldn't think of it any way or
Well,
any differently. Yeah.
I'm okay with them asking the question because some people don't know. But it's just there are certain words
hmm
that you shouldn't use.
Sure,
Like
sure, Michael, but
if you're
go ahead.
able-bodied
hmm
and you use the word normal to describe someone else, don't do it. That's
Well,
just
yeah, I know nobody's normal today.
yeah.
Right now, you are talking to someone who's not normal, and that's coming from me. So I'm a character. Nobody's normal. I don't know what normal means anymore. Normal? What's
Yeah,
normal?
yeah, I agree.
Um, but I mean, if somebody genuinely wants to know, like, okay, like what technology do you use to drive a car, or what are the brands called? How does it work? If somebody really wants to know, they would ask an active learning question. They wouldn't ask how did you do something. They would ask how do you do it, or do you see what I mean? They would ask an
Yeah,
active question, not a passive question.
yeah, I
Um,
agree with that.
so yeah, okay. Anyway, though, so there's that issue of an enormous amount of ableism and strange and bizarre comments. So that's a problem. And that's why you should keep speaking up on podcasts like mine about it. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to dig into, never mind about ableism and disability. So journalism, right? That's one of my interests. I studied international relations. That's my degree, but I have a great appreciation for journalism. So why don't you walk me through some of your interest in journalism, how it works, what your perceptions of journalism are in this digital age, and what do you really think? What's going on in journalism?
I started writing when I was 16, which is 1994. I went into journalism and when I graduated high school, which is 1997. And then I have my degree in communications and media arts in 2001, which is basically journalism. And I enjoyed just the difference because I started off at doing poetry and then I did journalism, which is like hard news and human interest. And then from there, I probably took a break longer than I should have because for a long time I didn't write, but I've been writing. I've done a couple of blogs since then. But my interest in journalism was just I wanted to write, so that was just a good way to go about it and way to get my message, my thoughts out. And from then till now, I think it's changed as far as people don't trust it as much. They think that it's not as truthful as it should be, and to a degree, I believe that. I agree with that. I do think that a lot of people who are writing for newspapers, their intention is good, but I think popularity and what people will want to hear and money get in the way. So I think it's changed.
It has, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, in the upper 90s, when you were in university, how were they approaching journalism? Like, what did you learn back then? Because, we didn't have, by the way, I'm 34, so I'm a young kid, but, before all that, when you were in university, I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
So at that point, we
Thanks for
didn't
that.
have, we didn't have social. Oh yeah, that's true. That is saying something about you just as much as it's saying something about me. Oh yeah.
It was a joke.
I, I never, by me saying myself is by me noticing how young I am, I'm also making a statement about you. Yeah, that's pretty good. I didn't actually think of it that way. But yeah, when you were studying journalism in the upper 90s,
Mhm.
what were they teaching you? How did they teach back then in the upper 90s? Because it's nothing like how they would teach now. But what were they teaching in the 90s?
Well, my first lesson that I ever learned was never write with I in mind. Never write with never use the word I,
Hmm.
meaning write about everyone else. Don't write about yourself because that just makes it personal. And that is the opposite of what news is supposed to be. You're not supposed to bring yourself into the story. You're supposed to just report what happened and be as can't think of the word right now, but
Impartial?
impartial. Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's exactly it. Be as impartial as you can. Just report it as it is, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And obviously, we had the internet, but it was very, very, very early. So it didn't really play into it. It was mainly just them telling us how we're supposed to approach the writing process. That was basically it.
Right, right. So then, Michael, in the 90s, when you were studying journalism, man, was it mostly like focused on like learning how to be a reporter in like a newspaper magazine setting, or was there a unit about TV journalism, radio? Because for me, journalism means all of it. It means TV, it means radio, podcast, blog, text. It means all varieties. But when you studied it in the 90s, because I think this is really fascinating. When you studied it back then, did they make you learn about, TV journalism, newspaper, radio, broadcast? Do you have to study all the elements back then?
I was on the newspaper, and I did have to take multiple classes on newspapers. I did take one intro to broadcasting class on the radio, but it wasn't. It was like an elective that I didn't have to take, but I chose to take it because I wanted to, because it was another avenue. But I knew my focus was on newspapers, and back then they didn't have podcasts, or I'd never heard of a podcast. And I don't even think I'd heard of a blog at that point. It was 97, 98. So I think my focus was on newspapers, and that's what I knew I wanted to write. And then the other stuff was just, I'll do it just to get the grade.
Hmm.
That was
Sure.
basically it. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So it was mostly focused on journalism for you, mostly focused on newspaper and writing articles in that context of the 90s. That's very interesting. Did you ever write professionally for any newspaper or any magazine professionally?
No, no, there was like, 3 or 4 newspapers I wrote for after college. But they were like, local weeklies in New York.
What does that mean? Like, what do you
Uh,
mean there?
there was newspapers that they would put out once a week or once every other week
Okay,
that I
interesting.
that I wrote for.
Mm-hmm. What,
I
what,
did Human Interest. I did uh, Hard News, and I also did one newspaper had me doing a column, which is basically just reviews of movies, and I
mm,
just did it just to do it because it was honestly because it was something to write.
mm-hmm. Right. That's pretty fun. What movie do you even remember what films you reviewed?
The only ones offhand that I know that I did was Chocolat, and I reviewed Family Man.
You
Oh,
reviewed Chocolat and what?
Chocolate and Family Man. Those are the only two offhand that I remember.
Okay, all right, interesting. I'm not too familiar with either one of those. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
All I remember about either one of those movies is who starred in
Okay, good.
them.
Well, that's I mean that's important. And then in a written review, would you write what you like, don't like? I guess what ingredients did you have to put into a written review of a film? What do you think?
Oh, for I always the way I wrote reviews, and I also did a blog in 2013. It was basically a arts and culture blog. I reviewed like local concerts, albums, EPs, plays, musicals. I would interview directors, that kind of thing. So
Mm.
when I did reviews, my main thing was be honest and write about it, what I thought. But if it was a good review, be balanced and write the good and the bad. Or if it was just all bad, just at the end, just find something that's redeeming, so that I can not just crap on the whole thing. So it was basically just be honest and try to find a balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I wouldn't be able to compete with you in that industry because with me, if I write a review, either I love it or hate it. You know, I don't believe in I don't I guess I don't believe in silver lining. Well, this movie was pretty bad, but mostly it was horrible. Except no, I'm not like that.
Yeah,
With me, either a movie is perfect or terrible. There's no middle ground for me, at least in my mind. Yeah. But that's good. That's a good life lesson. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you watch a lot of the movie reviews that are being done on YouTube now? Do you still read reviews of movies? Or
I've
do you,
not,
yeah.
I've actually never read a review of a movie
Oh, okay.
just because a lot of people don't like the way I write reviews because from what I've heard, reviewers are pretentious and they like to hear themselves speak or write, and they use words that I know what they mean, but you don't really need to use them. So like I try to be just honest and truthful and transparent and be I'm not going to need I'm not going to want you to need a dictionary or a thesaurus near you when you read my stuff.
Yes. I could not possibly agree with you more. I work with students as a teacher, and sometimes they want to read articles, and they're written by a newspaper that I'm not going to name drop it, but whatever the publication is, the publication chooses to use a lot of very like old fashioned words or weird words that we don't use anymore in English. And I'm like, you don't really need to say this word. Like that's not really how we talk now.
Yeah,
So that is a very important skill to know how to convey deep thoughts in a simplistic way, to speak
yeah,
from your heart, but and still use strong vocab and accurate, technical vocab and to be accurate with what you say. But it doesn't mean to use old-fashioned or weird words, and that drives me crazy. It's
yeah,
like
me too.
it's like
Like,
some of these people I think just wanted to write the word. They didn't actually they knew that it wasn't needed, but they just wanted to put it down. They wanted
yeah,
a sentence that could include that word. Well, don't do that. Wait for that word to come up naturally, and then it'll be even better and even
that's
stronger.
that's what I feel. I mean, when I was being taught, it was like just one of their messages was just be direct.
Hmm. Absolutely, Absolutely. All right. All right. Well, that's excellent. Okay. So then from this blog though, that's really fun. So back in 2013, when you had this blog, this cultural arts blog, did that like motivate you to get into the podcast space then in 2013? Because by 2013, I wasn't here in the podcast world, but podcasts were really starting to take off in 2013. So did you get into it then in 2013 with a podcast?
No, I got recently into it because of the blog I run now. The main reason why started the blog, the arts and culture thing, was because I liked concerts and I liked plays, and it was a good way to be able to go to shows and write about them. And
Yeah, absolutely.
so that's why I did that. And then in 2017, I started a blog called Wheels and Warriors, and that was when I got my mission, when I found my mission, and that was the whole focus on that was just helping disabled people, and that was what I knew I was going to do for the rest of my life.
How did you know that? Why don't you walk us through that day where you kind of discovered? Because I'm sure that everybody has that day, and I did too.
Honestly, it's not a fun story. It just came to me. It came to me fully formed.
Huh? Huh?
What I was meant to do it, because I totally believe in purpose. And
It's really good. I
yeah,
completely salute you. I agree with you 1,000 times over. What is purpose for those of us in the audience who maybe who are listening to this and are not quite sure? Because the more that I podcast and educate people in my own life, I am very suspicious about purpose as well. So what is purpose?
purpose to me is just what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life when you find it. It's, it's how you, it's the passion you have and how you use it to serve others.
There you go.
That's the main thing.
There you go. So it's what you're supposed to do, but it also you connected it to the being willing to serve other people, to be
Yeah,
willing to give back
because
to somebody else. Yes.
if you have a passion and you're just doing it to do it to have fun, that's great. But there's less service involved, and there's less meaning to. And in my experience, anyway, there's less meaning, there's less purpose, there's less drive, and like when you connect the purpose and the passion, I think that's the secret sauce. That's just
Hmm.
what makes everything better.
Yeah, to kind of blend it all together to make sure that the purpose kind of connects with the passion and it all lines up with service in the end. It all contributes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, well that's 100% accurate. So what can you tell me about the now not about the groups, not about the interview group thing that you run, but what just about the podcast that you develop. So what can you tell me about your podcast to start there?
I I have two podcasts. One is Tours of Diversity, and I basically how I do that is I interview disabled people, people within the disabled community, or people who are family members of disabled people, and I tell their stories and help them to push what they're doing forward, promote what they're doing. And then I have another one called Empowering Discussions with a Disabled Man. And the way I run that one is I have able-bodied people come on, ask me questions, anything they want about a disability. And
Cool.
then after that, I interview them so that they get to ask questions that they may have been afraid to ask, and that breaks down the walls of their fear. And then I interview them based on what they're doing, so that they learn and their audience learns, and then my I learn and my audience learns.
That's brilliant. I absolutely adore it. Years ago, and if you want to learn more, send me a message after the show. But years ago, I did that exact thing. There was one episode here at Aaron's Opinion where I actually allowed a guest to spend the entire time interviewing me. Now, of course, at the end of every episode, this one included, you'll get to ask me some questions at the end, but I on purpose did an interview where I on purpose
Mhm.
started the episode with the guest running the whole episode, actually interviewing me. And that's a lot of fun. That is so, so fun when it's done well, when it's somebody that cares about you and is truly a good person and means well the whole time, but they still ask great stuff.
Mhm.
That is so cool. When it if it lands well, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. Yeah, that's really fun. Hmm.
No, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to learn more about it, just send me a message later and I can specifically try to go back in the archive. It happened many years ago. I don't know. I would have to specifically spend some time trying to find what it's called now. But I remember that I did that. So yeah, so I have two really, well, I have thousands of questions, but I ask the ones that are the most important ones. I think something else very positive about you and very important about you is that in one of your podcasts, you actually allow family members of people who have disabilities to ask you questions. Now, that's a very important thing because family members are the people who are affected by people with disability. As I always say, if you're blind or if you're in a wheelchair, there's nothing wrong with that, right? As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with having glaucoma and a congenital heart defect. Or as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with you being in a wheelchair. You need to be in a wheelchair. Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes, family members are the people who are actually affected by the disability. They're the people that are afraid of it. So I guess what I'm really wondering is when you interview them and when you allow them to ask you when you interview family members of somebody with a disability, what are some really interesting things that people have asked you and what have you learned about the relationship of family and disability? Because that's really what that's about. What do you think?
I've learned what I've learned is basically how they interact and the difference of like how a disabled person versus their able-bodied family member relates to the situation and how one person might perceive something and someone else might perceive it in an entirely different way. And my father taught me many years ago when I was a kid about the importance of perspective. And it's largely, I think, how you look at things. And I think, like, mm, certain things of, like my mother is very, she helped me grow, she taught me how to grow up and she, like, helped me a lot. And certain things that she's witnessed and been a part of make her very sad and make her cry. And, like, years ago when that doctor said that thing to me, I was alone. But had my mother or my wife been there, things would have been very different. I just clammed up and didn't say anything. But I think it's also a matter of being your own advocate or someone else being an advocate for you and you finding your voice, which is a large part of why I do what I do.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess in interviewing family members who have a disability, I guess what you're really saying, I mean, it's kind of a mouthful because that's kind of I mean, I get it, but I think for some other people in the audience, I think that's a little bit like, no. It's a five-star experience. Like, don't let your heart be troubled. I love it. But what I'm saying is I think that's a very dense concept for someone else to understand. That's
Mhm.
that's kind of tricky, because it would be two different things, right? let's say that you someday interviewed my mother, right? Well, my mother is sighted, okay? Her answers that she would give to you about blindness would be similar to the answers that I give you about blindness, but not the same answers because it's a matter of perspective. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess that's really cool. That's really, really cool. What has been in interviewing family members, just speaking about that one, what has been the most interesting question or truly the best question somebody ever actually asked you on that podcast where you could tell they were really plugged in and really were genuine? What do you think?
The best questions I get are they're actually very general in the idea that they are like, can you do this? How do you do this? Um, oh, I didn't know you could do this. Can you explain it to me? They're very, they're not very in depth. They're curious, which I like, but they're not very in depth because they don't know. So I think that's part of why I do it, because I want them to learn and to know, and I want their questions to be more in depth or have more meat to them, if that makes sense.
Yes. Interesting. And then in your other podcast where you turn the table and allow the guest to interview you,
Hmm.
what have been some of the experiences that you've had with that, and what has been the most compelling question, or what has been the question that somebody asked you and you said, "Wow, that's a really good question." Like what has been, as I said, the most genuine question that you have been asked when you allow yourself to be interviewed on the other podcast?
It's just the same thing as the one podcast I had to ask them questions. The podcast I get guessed is basically very general, one-dimensional questions where they're curious and they don't really know, so they just want to know how you do this and how do you dress yourself, how do you drive. Um, oh, I didn't know you could do this, and then that sparks the back and forth that I'm looking for.
Right, absolutely. You're very right. You're very, very right about that. That's really, really, really fascinating. Okay, all right. And then outside of these two podcasts, now they're podcasts. I'll have to go back and take a closer look. I saw that I saw the description, but I glanced. I glanced at it with voiceover. I didn't actually read through it. I know it's a great description though, and I'm not worried about it. But so maybe I can get the links for these podcasts to certainly tag them in the description. But of course, now are you also like? Do you also put your podcasts up on YouTube as like videos for people to watch?
No.
That's interesting. Why not?
Because I'm a writer. I'm not tech savvy. So
Okay.
like I do my shows on StreamYard,
Okay. Good.
but like they're not very. I need to rework them to make them actual. Because
You don't need to change anything. You're doing great. Don't make changes.
I've been told that they aren't actual really podcasts. So like I have to figure out a way to make them actual podcasts and put them on Apple rather than just
Ah, that's
put them
easy. That's easy.
putting.
I can help you.
Oh,
I can give you advice. That's a very easy fix. But certainly if people can listen to your, well, let me put it this way. After you interview somebody, where do you put the audio files? Like where could somebody listen to it right now? Like how do you organize the listening experience?
everything I just put on StreamYard,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
the audio and visual, but I have to just move everything over because I still have them. I just have to,
Hmm.
like I said, I have to move everything over
Well,
so that people know.
Does StreamYard produce an RSS?
I don't think that's why I don't think so. That's why people don't actually call it a podcast.
Hmm.
They just
Yeah.
call it a show.
Well,
So I
that's
think
fine. That's wonderful. No, it's not critical either way. It's just with the RSS feed that can be, distributed obviously to the main player, to the main sources, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and when it's there, then it becomes globalized. But also StreamYard is very creative and very attractive and very like personal and intuitive. So I totally get that too. Yeah. Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, that's also good. But yes, I would. In fact, I would be shocked if StreamYard cannot produce an RSS because if you have a collection of audio files, that would be a feed. So that's a little strange that they haven't gotten there. I don't know. I've never given that thought, but they should. But if not, well, now that you're in the Aaron's opinion community, we can help you with that. But that's an easier fix. That's not a struggle to get your stuff on Apple at all. Actually, yeah, that's really easy to do that. You just need to, set up a podcast with, a name, a category, so it can be on a specific chart. There are some like parameters that you have to, there are some hoops, but then once you're there, it's there. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that's all really deeply fascinating to me. So have you now, globally speaking, because, I'm very blessed here at Aaron's Opinion to have many connections overseas, all the continents. And, have you interviewed anybody overseas in other countries?
No, I've just interviewed people from this country.
That's fine.
The ones that were the most important to me were I interviewed Dave Stevens. He's a baseball player, but he's a minor league baseball player, and he doesn't have legs.
Okay.
And I interviewed another gentleman. I don't remember his name right now, but he is the first person. He was the first person to pitch on crutches. And
The first person to throw a pitch on crutches while using crutches. Okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
in the minor league, yeah. And then I also interviewed. Did you ever see the show Facts of Life in the 80s? I mean, you were a
No,
kid.
because I was
Yeah,
born in 91.
yeah. There was a show called Facts of Life in the 80s, and there was repeats in the 90s. And there was a character on there named Cousin Jerry. Her actual name was Jerry Jewell, and she was the first person who was disabled who I ever saw on television. I got to interview her last year.
Really?
Yeah,
That's fascinating. So you've
yeah,
interviewed so you interviewed an actress who happened to be the first actress with a disability to be on a syndicated show in America.
yes, yes.
Ooh, okay. I want to pick your brain about that at a later date. That's super cool because I also have a fascination with acting and like drama and television. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, that
That's
was
some
very
cool
cool.
stuff.
That was very cool. Like I remember, but the day it was happening, I was in my living room, like mouthing the words of what I was going to ask her, and my wife was watching me, and I didn't realize it. And then after it was over and the interview was done, I couldn't stop like shaking. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop shaking, and I honestly teared up a little bit.
Oh, that's so good. I totally relate to you, man. Yeah. That's really fun. Because when you interview someone who was in a major industry like that, they can share a lot of depth about their life and experience and the little different experiences they had that led them to that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Really good.
Mhm.
No, seriously, I need to watch that one. Okay. That's fun.
I'll send it to you.
That is super cool. Super, super, super cool. Um, All right, all right. And so that okay, now never mind or in in conjunction, I guess, with the podcasting, the great work that you do in the podcast space, mate, what else? So you run like a group interview because I've seen it around Facebook and I haven't fully understood. So what else can you tell me about these group interview monthly, like kind of fireside chats that you do? What are those?
Well, there's two things to do. I have a Facebook group that I invite people. I've had people in, and once you're part of the group, you can write for a like online magazine that I have, and it's basically just it's about disability or basically anything they want to write about. And the main purpose of that is to just get your opinions and your voice out there and your thoughts and on a certain subject. And once a month, I hold a speaking engagement on Zoom called Stories of Diversity, and it's basically 5 to 10 people speak for 20 to 25 minutes on a certain theme that I give them about that has to do with the disability. And that's what the main thing of what I do is I have people speak on certain themes because I want them to get their thoughts, opinions, and voices out there and just give them a space for that.
Oh, I love it. Well, I never make promises I can't keep, but here's one promise that I will keep. If you interview, I mean, if you add me to one of those engagement things, the
Hmm.
only promise I'll keep is that at least you'll get Aaron's opinion. I'll give you my opinion about stuff. That's super fun. That's super super cool. And then after you have the Zoom like meeting, like what do you do? Like, okay, you record the meeting obviously, but then what do you do with the video feed, and then what do you do with the audio after that point? You just put it on the Facebook group, or what do you do? Yeah.
I give it to the people who spoke.
Okay. In addition, well, that's helpful. In addition
So,
to that,
so,
though,
so
how does the public engage with is what I'm asking? Yeah. Hmm.
I stream it on Facebook, and then I have the
Cool.
Zoom, and then you can join the Zoom,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if you're in the Zoom room, you can
Understood.
ask the people questions, and you can engage, and you can be involved. Or if you just want to be on Facebook and listen to it, you can do that too.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this now, and I'll probably say it later today. Please add me to your Facebook group. You can send me a link to on my PM. I want to be involved because you're doing
Okay.
the right thing. Yeah, love what you do. You're on the right track. Yeah, that's super fun. Yeah, I've never each podcaster and each interviewer is different. I've never really utilized live tools, because it's never really applied to what I do, but it can be powerful if you get it done just right and if you get the right people to watch. It can also be a great resource for people. Either way, you're doing the right thing. Yeah, love what
Thank
you do.
you.
Love what you do. So you live out in Vegas, right?
I do. I've been here since July of '02.
So tell me, how are your blackjack skills? What's the most you've ever won in the casinos?
I've never actually played blackjack other
Oh,
than
you're
like
killing me.
with my grandmother. I'm a roulette guy.
You're a what guy? Didn't catch it. What?
Roulette.
Roulette. Okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
I
Interesting.
love roulette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most I ever won was 2,100.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, what about like have you been out into like the desert of Nevada? Have you ever done like outdoor camping or like outdoorsy stuff? Because I've heard there's a lot of great outdoor activities out in the desert, right?
I've actually never done anything outdoors
Oh, okay.
in Vegas. Like
Interesting.
most I've
Interesting.
ever done was like gone to a show.
Uh-huh.
But like I'd be too like afraid of like going out camping and getting like eaten by a coyote. Or like like a coyote like coming up to me and my wife and like bothering us. And so I'm not really an outdoorsy kind of guy.
Okay. Hey, all good. No, I love animals like that. I've never been to the western part of the country. I went to California one time, but it was a brief visit. But no, I would love to go to the natural part, the nature parks out there, Yellowstone. But that's me. That's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I totally get that. But it just looks really beautiful. One of my
Oh,
relatives, when he goes out there to the west, he likes
hmm.
using his drone and he makes like creative videos where he shows the landscape and shows how beautiful it is. It seems like your part of the country is so beautiful out
It
there
is. It
in
is beautiful.
Nevada.
It is
Yeah.
beautiful. I just don't want to be around it too much. My nephew is big into drones and
hmm
very
hmm
talented as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's fun. That's really, really fun for people. Yeah. Yeah, well, really good. All right. Well, I think that covers I think that covers all the positive stuff that you're doing. Certainly you're not getting out of here today without asking me some questions. So, Michael Martin Hummel, what are some questions that you really want to ask me, Aaron Richmond, Aaron's opinion, to really get under my skin, to really make me sweat? What do you really want to know? Ask away.
What I know you don't drive because you're blind, but like what I'm curious. Like when people see that you're blind or they see like your disability, how do they perceive you or interact with you,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that make you feel?
Sure. Either they interact with me like a normal person, if they're a normal person, quote unquote. If they're no, if they're a normal, educated, just a reasonable person, then they interact with me just like you would.
Okay.
And typically, what I'm noticing now that I'm in my 30s is if the person is ignorant, they typically are ashamed of their ignorance, and this is my opinion. They're ashamed of the ignorance, so they actually ignore me and walk away.
Yeah.
But that might not be true. That's just my perception and my opinion. With the understanding that I have usable vision, Michael, but obviously I'm not seeing. And this will sound silly. I'm blind, so that means I'm not seeing what's going on. And I
Mhm.
don't mean that to say that you didn't know that. I mean to say that it's a very subtle thing because
Mhm.
there's a lot of nonverbal stuff that I'm not picking up on.
Yeah.
But that's why I created a podcast to use my voice because I have a voice and I want to use it to help people. So that's kind of the why. I think, it has always varied from people. People either love me or they hate me. There's no in the middle. Either I'm
Mhm.
loved or hated, understood or confused by. But either way, I go about my business, and that's
Yeah.
me. Yeah. hmm
Um, I'm curious. You said that when we were talking, you said you agree with 98% of what I said.
Right.
Why would you say that you disagree with how I think about things or what I believe?
Sure. I guess I agreed less, or I guess I disagreed towards the front of the conversation, towards the start, where you said that you always try to have conversations with people. And I agree with that mostly, except for the fact that I disagree because I think some people are not worth the conversation when they're belligerently ignorant. They're not deserving of my knowledge is what I'm saying. But you're entitled, being that you have a different opinion, you're entitled to it. So if you want to keep educating as many people as you possibly can, go. Great. Do it. But I'm telling you and saying that some people are not worth the energy. But that's my own opinion
And
in my own life. Yeah.
I agree with that too. Though. I mean, I always try to lead with education, but
Absolutely.
if someone, if like you said, if someone is belligerent and
Or just
looking
simply
down
too
to me,
ignorant. Yeah.
or like just I can tell with the initial conversation that they aren't willing to receive the information that I'm going to give them,
Precisely.
I don't bother.
Precisely. That's what I meant. Precisely.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions?
That was basically it, really.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, well, that's all really good. I want you to keep doing what you're doing because you're doing the right thing. And that's the most important thing. The most important thing is that you're right. And you need to keep showing other people all the great stuff that you are continuing to do.
Thank
At
you.
any rate, if someone wants to get in touch with Michael Martin Humel, let me turn that off actually. Hold on. If somebody wants to get in touch with Michael Martin Humel, how can you be reached?
My website is wheelsandwarriors.com. It's a online magazine style website, and then my phone number. If you message me on Facebook, I'll give you that. And then my email is michaelhummel@wheelsandwarriors.com. And by that, I mean wheels, the letter N, warriors.com.
Thank you so much. All right, don't hang up because there's something else we have to do just for 30 seconds.
Okay.
But I just want to say, Michael Martin Humel, absolute honor to have you on the show. Great conversation. And the way you conduct yourself and what you do is great. And most importantly, your spirit and attitude and your presence is what's really attractive. So just keep doing what you're doing. And we at Aaron's Opinion, we completely support you. And we're going to make sure that people all over the world know the important work you do. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for spending about an hour of your afternoon with me. And of course, everybody, keep podcasting out there. Be well and keep educating people when they deserve to be educated. Anyway, until next time, everybody, have a wonderful day. And of course, help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.